Welcome to Templar Key and the Knights Templars. The First Crusade was one of the most sensational victories of the medieval era. Christian knights from Western Europe secured control of the Holy Land, including the sacred city of Jerusalem. But despite this triumph, travel through the Holy Land remained dangerous. After the Crusade, the bulk of the army returned to Europe. Fulcher of Chartres was a priest who decided to remain in the New Kingdom. He records that only 300 knights and 300 foot soldiers made up the standing forces of Jerusalem. In 1096, Christian pilgrims arriving by ship faced grave danger as they traveled to Jerusalem via roads, as these routes were infested with robbers and Bedouin raiders. During these perilous early days, the French knight Hugh de Payens arrived as a pilgrim to the Holy Land. Hugh felt called by Christ to act as a protector to travelers. Hugh joined with another pious knight, Godfrey of St. Omer. Hugh and Godfrey gathered together a small band of knights and committed themselves to protecting pilgrims. Day in and day out they braved the dangerous roads of Palestine, guarding travelers on their way to pray at the Holy Sepulchre of Christ. Hugh's brotherhood attracted the attention of the King of Jerusalem, Baldwin II. In 1120, King Baldwin formally endorsed Hugh's mission, granting him as a headquarters a portion of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. The Templars gained an even more prestigious patron when they received the endorsement of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. "Go forth confidently then, you knights," wrote Saint Bernard, "and repel the foes of the cross of Christ with a stalwart heart." Saint Bernard's endorsement caused the fame of the Templars to spread, and their mission inspired kings and nobles across Christendom, and donations poured in. Before long, Templar houses were found all across Western Europe, and armored Templars clad in white tunics emblazed with a red cross became essential members of the military establishments in Spain and the Crusader states. Their mission in the Kingdom of Jerusalem expanded, and they were granted strategic castles and territories to safeguard. The Templars had developed an iron discipline that made them the finest army of their era. The Templars lived like monks, praying and working according to a strict routine, but in addition they included rigorous military training. Over the course of the Crusades, the Templars were frequently on the front lines, and they were with King Baldwin the Leper in 1177 when he crushed Saladin at the Battle of Montchaussade. They were at the Horns of Hattin in 1187 when Saladin defeated a Crusader army. They were with Richard the Lionheart in 1191 when he smashed Saladin's troops at Arsa. They were at the Battle of Los Novas de Tolosa in 1212 when the kings of Spain annihilated the Almohads of Morocco. As they expanded, the Templars developed a sophisticated financial operation to help pilgrims. The financial competence of the Templars prompted many kings and lords to request their services as money managers. One such king was Philip IV of France, who borrowed liberally from the Templars in the early 14th century. Loath to repay what he owed, the king concocted a series of false charges against the Templars, accusing them of heresy, sexual impropriety, and witchcraft. Historians today are in broad agreement that Philip's charges were fraudulent. Philip's agents arrested the French Templars, some of whom confessed to the charges while brutally tortured. Among those who would not confess was Jacques de Molay, the Templar Grand Master. King Philip had Jacques and other Templars burned at the stake. From the flames, the last Grand Master of the order called God's vengeance down upon the French king. Because of the power of the French monarchy at the time, Philip was able to pressure Pope Clement V into dismantling the Templar order. In 1312, even in Philip's own kingdom, most people were horrified by what the king had done to the Templars. Still widely regarded as heroes of the Crusades, many saw God's justice in Philip's agonizing death after a hunting accident in 1314. Today, a plethora of sensationalist legends have developed around the Templars. Some believe they were magicians or heretics, while others believe they became Freemasons. Although such ideas have been liberally employed by novelists, filmmakers, and conspiracy theorists, none of them is supported by the historical record. The reality is that the Templars were an order of brother knights dedicated to Jesus Christ, the Church, and the cause of the Crusades. To learn more about the Templars, visit our website templarkey.com, where you can find our magazines and website articles on various esoteric topics, including the Knights Templars. You can also start with the following books: The New Knighthood by Malcolm Barber and The Knights Templar, a New History by Helen Nicholson. The Creation of the Knights Templars. A Muslim Arab army invaded Jerusalem and the Holy Land in the 7th century, bringing an end to Christian control in the region under the Eastern Roman Empire, commonly known as the Byzantine Empire. According to historian Peter Frankopan, by the end of the 11th century the Byzantine Empire had lost additional territory to Muslim conquest, including more Christian holy sites. See Peter Frankopan in his book The First Crusade. In response, in 1095 Alexios Komnenos, the Byzantine emperor from 1081 to 1118, petitioned Pope Urban II for aid in combating the Muslims. Frankopan observed his plea for assistance was a desperate last throw of the dice by a ruler whose regime and empire was on the verge of collapse. In response, the Pope called for the seizure of the sacred sites of Christianity in the Holy Land, thereby initiating the First Crusade. No one named it the First Crusade at the time, but their goal was to retake possession of the holy sites, said Malcolm Barber, a professor of history at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom and a prolific writer on the Knights Templars. The First Crusade. Historians agree that Pope Urban II's speech at Clermont-Ferrand in November 1095 was the inspiration for a series of military wars to retake the sovereignty of the Holy Land from the Muslims. These campaigns, called the Crusades, were thought to have heavenly approval at the time. They frequently resulted in bloody combat. Their fundamental motivation was a desire to have access to the holy sites connected to the life and sites linked to Jesus, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, which is widely believed to house the tomb of Jesus. The Crusaders were promised absolution from sin and eternal glory. If that wasn't enough incentive, they also wanted to acquire land and wealth in the East. A large number of nobles and peasants answered the summons and marched across Europe to Constantinople, the center of the Byzantine Empire. With the backing of the Byzantine Emperor, the knights headed by Armenian Christians marched through Seljuk-controlled territory in modern-day Turkey and Syria on their way to Jerusalem. Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders on July 15, 1099, following a 5-week siege that began in June 1099. Accounts from eyewitnesses attest to the fear of battle. Ralph of Con, observing the city from Mount Olives, observed the fleeing inhabitants, the fortified towers, the roused garrison, the men racing to arms, the women in tears, the priests turned to prayer, and the streets resonating with cries, crashing, clanging, and neighing. In order to safeguard their newly created domains, the Crusaders constructed a vast number of fortified castles throughout the Holy Land and erected churches loyal to Rome. The Dome of the Rock represented the Temple of Solomon to the Crusaders, while the Al-Aqsa Mosque was converted into a palace and stables. The Crusader-founded Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem included 15 cathedral churches. In 1110, for instance, the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem became the seat of a Western Christian bishop. In the 1220s, the Teutonic Knights, which were German crusaders, purchased the Castle Montfort, which French crusaders had founded in the 12th century. They restored it and renamed it Starkenburg. The keystone was likely sculpted during the reconstruction of the site by these Teutonic Knights. Baybars, the Mamluk king of Egypt, captured the citadel in 1272 after a lengthy siege. The remaining knights retired to Acre, now known as Akko in Israel, the Holy Land's final Christian bastion. For the purpose of the crusade, a multinational army was assembled and headed by a number of the monarchs and nobles of Europe. As a result, these crusaders reclaimed a substantial portion of the Holy Land. In order to protect it, they established 4 regions known as Crusader states. These These were the Kingdom of Jerusalem 1099 to 1298, the Principality of Antioch 1098 to 1287, the County of Edessa 1098 to 1150, and the County of Tripoli 1102 to 1289. After the majority of Crusaders returned to Europe, it remained necessary to defend the Holy Land and administer its people, which consisted of Christians, Jews, Muslims, and new European settlers. They needed to strengthen their grip on Jerusalem and its surroundings. They didn't have a consolidated state which you would color in a solid area on a map. The second issue they faced was that a number of the areas they governed were relatively simple for the enemy to invade, and there was nothing to maintain law and order. Thus these conditions gave rise to the Templars. See the Crusader States. By Malcolm Barber. Hugues de Payens. Hugues de Payens was a French nobleman who resided there after visiting Jerusalem between 1114 and 1116. Hugh de Payens, sometimes written Hugues de Payens, was the first Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Although little is known about him. See Susie Hodge, author and historian in Secrets of the Knights Templar, The Hidden History of the World's Most Powerful Order. He was a French knight from the Champagne region of Burgundy, the vassal of Hugh, Count of Champagne, who most likely served during the First Crusade in the Holy Land. He was poorly educated but dependable and a skilled combatant. Between 1114 and 1116 he travelled to the Holy Land, and he most likely returned in 1118 with 8 other men, including family and associates. See Hugues de Payens by Thierry Leroux. The Knights Templars. The Templars, additionally known as the Order of Solomon's Temple and the Knights Templars, were initially known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. In Latin, Paupers Commilitones Christi Templique Salomonici. They were a Catholic military order and one of the wealthiest and most popular Western Christian military orders. They were founded in 1119, had their headquarters on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and existed during the Middle Ages for nearly 2 centuries. The Roman Catholic Church officially sanctioned the Templars through decrees such as Pope Innocent II's papal bull Omni Datum Optimum. They quickly grew in membership and power throughout Christendom. Templar Knights were the most well-trained and effective fighting troops of the Crusades, wearing distinctive white mantles with a red cross. They were influential in Christian finance, non-combatant members of the order who made up as much as 90% of their membership and managed a vast economic infrastructure across Christendom. They created an early form of banking by developing innovative financial techniques. The Crusaders and the Templars established nearly 1,000 commanderies and fortifications across Europe and the Holy Land, arguably establishing the world's first multinational corporation. The Templars were inextricably linked. Following the capture of Jerusalem from the Fatimid Caliphate by the Franks in the First Crusade in 1099, there were many pilgrimages made by Christians to the various sacred sites in the Holy Land. Although the Christian-controlled city of Jerusalem was relatively secure, the rest of Outrema was not. Bandits and marauding highwaymen preyed on these Christian pilgrims, who were routinely slaughtered, sometimes by the hundreds, as they attempted to make the journey from the coast at Jaffa to the Holy Land's interior. The French knight Hugh de Payens in 1119 proposed the formation of a Catholic monastic order for the protection of these pilgrims to Ormond, Patriarch of Jerusalem, and King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. At the Council of Nablus, on January 1120, King Baldwin and Patriarch Ormond granted the Templars permission to establish a headquarters in the wing of the royal palace on the Temple Mount within the recently occupied Al-Aqsa Mosque, due to its location atop what was considered the foundations of Solomon's Temple. The Temple Mount was steeped in mystery even at that time. The Crusaders mistook the Al-Aqsa Mosque for Solomon's Temple, so the new order was given the name the Poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, or as they are commonly known, the Knights Templars, in honor of the site. See issue 3 of the Templar Key magazine on the website templarkey.com. The members of the Knights Templar were required to abide by the 25 laws that were set by the Council of Nablus. Among these was a proclamation concerning the employment of physical force, which included, if a cleric takes up arms in the cause of self-defense, he shall not bear any guilt, emphasizing the requirement for these holy men to be able to fight for their faith. See Hans Emair Concordus of Nablus in the Journal of Ecclesiastical History. Although according to Malcolm Barber, Fulcher of Chartres makes no mention of either the Council of Nablus or the beginnings of the Templars, it is plausible that if he was indeed a canon of the Holy Sepulchre, he saw no reason to distinguish the early Templars from his own community. In short, to him they were a militia of the Holy Sepulchre, little different from the knights who protected the Patriarch when he carried the true cross into battle. See The Crusader State by Malcolm Barber. The Templars were founded with approximately 20 knights. Along with Hugh de Payens and Andrea de Montbard, they included Godfrey de Saint-Omer, Payens de Montdidier, Archambault de Saint-Agnan, Geoffrey Bissell, Rossel, and Gondimer. The Order of the Knights Templar originally had limited financial resources, relying mainly on donations to survive. See the expert Simonetta Cirini. You can also read the Templar Key magazines and website articles on templarkey.com. The order's emblem depicted two knights riding a single horse, emphasizing its poverty. The actual reason for this was that one knight would ride forwards and the other was facing backward, therefore seeing any possible attacks on a narrow path when protecting the pilgrims. The Templars' impoverished situation did not last long. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux was a prominent church figure and French abbot responsible for the founding of the Cistercian order of monks, and nephew of one of the founding knights, André de Montbard. The Council of Troyes. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes, Bernard of Clairvaux led a group of prominent churchmen in officially approving and endorsing the order on behalf of the church. Bernard of Clairvaux lent his support to the Templars by writing the letter in praise of the new knighthood. With this formal blessing by Bernard of Clairvaux, the Templars became a favored charity throughout Christendom, receiving noble-born sons donations of money, land, and businesses from families eager to aid in the Holy Land's defense. The primitive or Latin rule is a supplementary 68-point code of conduct that was formed for the Templars in 1129 by the Council of Troyes under the leadership of Hugh de Payens and Bernard of Clairvaux. According to Hodge, the Latin rule set clear rules about how Templars should conduct themselves at all times. It was designed to emphasize the Templars' zeal and devotion to their faith. The laws dictated everything from the sort of clothing that could be worn to the types of horses that may be ridden, as well as the style of their beards and the length of their hair, and the amount of meat that they could consume in a given week. In particular, it forbade its members to have any kind of interaction with women, including the ladies in their own families. However, according to Malcolm Barber, some rules were bent or even broken to attract new members for the confraternity Templars. In the following years they became more famous and got more recruits, so there was a demand for a Latin rule that was more appropriate to their activities. As the Templars grew in number, the Latin rule became more flexible and recruits did not have to join as full-time members, and some joined for a fixed period before leaving. See the Templar Key articles on the templarkey.com. Also see the Rule of the Templars. The French text of the Rule of the Order of the Knights Templar by Judith Mary Upton Ward. The organization included a variety of roles for non-combatant and frontline Templars. There were finances involved in running the charity. The Grand Master was the absolute ruler of the order. From the start, the Grand Master was the supreme ruler of all Templars everywhere, and he remained in that position for life, Hodge informs us. From c. 1119 until the fall of Jerusalem in 1191, the Grand Master was based in Jerusalem. Initially, Pope Innocent II provided financial support to the order. The papal bull Omni Datum Optimum issued by Innocent II in 1139 provided another great benefit by exempting the order from local law enforcement. As a result of this decision, Templars were granted complete freedom of movement across all national boundaries, were exempt from all taxes, and were subject only to the authority of the Pope. The order expanded rapidly due to its well-defined purpose and plentiful resources. The heavy armored Templar knights on their war horses would often charge at the enemy ahead of the central army bodies, serving as the advance shock troops in pivotal battles during the Crusades. To try to dismantle the lines of the opposing army, some 500 Templar knights helped several thousand infantry defeat Saladin's army of more than 26,000 soldiers in 1177 at the Battle of Montjuic, one of their most famous victories. For a Templar knight, spiritual protection from the armor of faith is as essential as physical protection from the armor of steel. As a result, he is protected from both supernatural threats and human aggression. Although the order's primary purpose was military in nature, only a small fraction of its members participated in actual battles. The rest served as backup for the knights and managed the kingdom's finances. Despite taking an oath of personal poverty, the Templar order was given authority over substantial resources. It was common practice for affluent noblemen to entrust the care of their estates to the Knights Templar while they went off to fight in the Crusades. In 1150, the order began creating letters of credit for pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, allowing them to deposit their valuables at a local Templar preceptory before setting out on their journey, receive a document indicating the value of their deposits, and then use that document upon arriving in the Holy Land to retrieve their funds in an amount of treasure equal to the deposit. This innovative arrangement was an early form of banking and may have been the first formal system to support the use of checks, therefore increasing the safety of pilgrims by making them less appealing to thieves, and contributed to the coffers of the Knights Templar. Based on this combination of charitable contributions and commercial transactions, the Templars established financial networks throughout all of Christendom. They acquired vast tracts of land in Europe and the Middle East, and they purchased and managed farms and vineyards. According to many, they constructed colossal stone cathedrals and castles, although this is purely fictional. They engaged in manufacturing, import and export, leased many ships, and even owned a handful of ships. The Crusades. The Templar Knights could be considered the first truly global business organization. The tide turned against the Crusaders around the middle of the 12th century. Saladin and other strong Islamic leaders had succeeded in strengthening Islamic unity. Many Christian groups began to disagree on how to approach and treat the Holy Land. Internal strife between the Knights Templar, Knights Hospitaller, and the Teutonic Knights lasted for decades, weakening Christian political and military power. Jerusalem was retaken by Muslim forces led by Saladin in 1187 after the Templars had been involved in several unsuccessful campaigns, the most important of which was the Battle of Hattin. During the Sixth Crusade in 1229, Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II reclaimed the city for Christians without the help of the Knights Templar. However, he was only able to keep it for a little over 10 years. Retaken by the Ayyubid dynasty and Khwarizmi mercenaries in 1244, Jerusalem did not come back under Western control until 1917, when the British took it back from the Ottoman Empire during World War I. When they were finally driven from Jerusalem, the Templars established new strongholds in northern cities like the ports of Acre, which they maintained for the next century. The last two mainland strongholds, Tortosa, modern-day Syria, and Athlit, were also taken in 1291. In present-day Israel, they relocated their headquarters to Limassol on the island of Cyprus and attempted to maintain a garrison on the tiny Awad island just off the coast of Tortosa. In the 13th century, a new invasion force at Awad attempted to engage in coordinated military operations with the Mongols. During the siege of Awad in 1302 or 1303, the Templars lost the island to the Egyptian Mamluk Sultanate. As a result of losing the island, the Crusaders lost their final foothold in the Holy Land. As the military mission of the order became less significant, support for the organization began to decline. During the 200 years of their existence, however, the Templars had become an integral part of daily life throughout Christendom. Hundreds of Templar houses were dispersed throughout Europe and the Near East, giving the organization a significant local presence. Many Europeans interacted with the Templar network on a daily basis, for example by working on a Templar farm or vineyard, or by using the order as a depository for personal valuables. The order remained unsubjected to local government, making it a state within a state. Its standing army, which no longer has a clearly defined mission, could pass freely through all borders. This situation exacerbated tensions with some European nobility, particularly as the Templars expressed an interest in establishing their own monastic state in the same manner that Teutonic knights had done in Prussia, the Baltic, and the Knights Hospitaller were doing in Rhodes. The arrests of the Knights Templars. In 1305, the new Pope Clement V, who was based in Avignon, France, sent letters to the Templar Grand Master Check de Molay and the Hospitaller Grand Master Foul de Villeret to discuss the possibility of merging the two orders. Neither was amenable to the idea, but Pope Clement persisted, and in 1306 he invited both Grand Masters to France to discuss the matter. De Molay arrived first in early 1307, but de Villeret was delayed for several months. While waiting, de Molay and Clement discussed criminal charges that had been made 2 years earlier by an ousted Templar, which were being discussed by King Philip IV of France and his ministers. It was generally agreed that the charges were false, but Clement sent the king a written request for assistance in the investigation. The secret initiation ceremony. Rumors about the secret initiation ceremony of the Templars created distrust. King Philip IV of France, while deeply in debt to the order, took advantage of the situation by exploiting the mistrust. In 1307 he exerted pressure on Pope Clement V to have a significant number of the order's French members imprisoned, tortured into false confessions, and then burned at the stake. In 1312, after additional pressure, Pope Clement V dissolved the order. The sudden disappearance of a substantial portion of Europe's infrastructure spawned rumors and stories that have kept the Templar name alive to the present day. See the Templarkey magazine, issue 4. According to some historians, King Philip, who was already deeply in debt to the Templars from his war against England, decided to seize upon the rumors for his own purposes. He began pressuring the church to take action against the order as a way of freeing himself from his debts. At dawn on Friday, October 13, 1307, a date sometimes incorrectly cited as the origin of the popular stories about Friday the 13th, King Philip IV ordered de Molay and scores of other French Templars to be simultaneously arrested. The arrest warrant started with the words, "For Duc Inissa NS pass content news avons des enemies de la foi dans le royaume, God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom." No precise numbers exist, but it is estimated that there were between 15,000 and 20,000 Templars at the order's peak, of whom about a tenth were actual knights. Allegations of heresy. Claims were made that during Templar admission ceremonies recruits were forced to spit on the cross, deny Christ, and engage in indecent kissing. Brethren were also accused of worshipping idols, and the order was said to have encouraged homosexual practices. Many of these allegations contain tropes that bear similarities to accusations made against other persecuted groups such as Jews, heretics, and accused witches. These allegations, though, were highly politicized without any real evidence. Still, the Templars were charged with numerous other offenses such as financial corruption, fraud, and secrecy. Many of the accused confessed to these charges under torture, even though the Templars denied being tortured in their written confessions. Their confessions obtained under duress caused a scandal in Paris. The prisoners were coerced to confess that they had spat on the cross. One said, "I, Raymond de la Fere, 21 years old, admit that I have spat 3 times on the cross, but only from my mouth and not from my heart." See issue 4 of the Templar Key magazine, which divulges the secret initiation ceremony. The Templars were accused of idolatry and were suspected of worshipping either a figure known as Baphomet or a mummified severed head they recovered amongst other artifacts at their original headquarters on the Temple Mount. It is also theorized to be that of the head of John the Baptist among other things. See issue 4 of the Templarkey magazine. Also, there will be a dedicated article regarding the Baphomet in the future. Relenting to King Philip IV's demands, Pope Clement then issued the papal bull Pastoralis Praeeminentiae on November 22, 1307, which instructed all Christian monarchs in Europe to arrest all Templars and seize their assets. Pope Clement called for papal hearings to determine the Templars' guilt or innocence, and once freed of the Inquisitors' torture, many Templars recounted their confessions. Some had the sufficient legal experience to defend themselves in the trials. Still, in 1310, having appointed the Archbishop of Saint-Philippe de Marigny to lead the investigation, King Philip IV blocked this attempt, using the previously forced confessions to have dozens of Templars burnt at the stake in Paris. With King Philip IV threatening military action unless the Pope complied with his wishes, Pope Clement finally agreed to disband the order, citing the public scandal that had been generated by the confessions. At the Council of Vienne in 1312, he issued a series of papal bulls, including Vox in Excelso, which officially dissolved the order, and Ad Providem, which turned over most Templar assets to the Hospitallers. As for the leaders of the order, the elderly Grand Master Jacques de Molay, who had confessed under torture, retracted his confession. Geoffrey de Charny, preceptor of Normandy, also retracted his confession and insisted on his innocence. Both men were declared guilty of being relapsed heretics and sentenced to burn alive at the stake in Paris on March 18, 1314. De Molay reportedly remains defiant to the end, asking to be tied in such a way that he could face the Notre Dame Cathedral and hold his hands together in prayer. According to legend, he called out from the flames that Pope Clement and King Philip would soon meet him before God. His actual words were recorded on the parchment as follows: "For Dieu mis sate creators et apech. Il va bientôt arriver malheur ceux qui nous sont condamnés à mort." God knows who is wrong and has sinned. Soon a calamity will occur to those who have condemned us to death. Pope Clement died only a month later, and King Philip died while hunting in the same year. The remaining Templars around Europe were either arrested and tried under the papal investigation, with virtually none convicted, absorbed into other Catholic military orders, or pensioned off and allowed to live out their days peacefully. By papal decree, the property of the Templars was transferred to the Knights Hospitaller, except in the kingdoms of Castile, Aragon, and Portugal. Other than France, Portugal was the first country in Europe where they had settled, occurring only 2 or 3 years after the order's foundation in Jerusalem. The Portuguese King Denis I refused to pursue and persecute the former knights, as had occurred in many sovereign states. Under his protection, many confraternity Templars simply joined the Order of Christ and a parallel Supreme Order of Christ of the Holy See. Both are considered for some successors to the Knights Templar, although the genuine Knights of Malta are the actual successors. In September 2001, a document known as the Chinon Parchment, dated 17 to 20th of August 1308, was discovered in the Vatican archives by Barbara Fraile, apparently after having been filed in the wrong place in 1628. It is a record of the trial of the Templars. It shows that Pope Clement absolved the Templars of all heresies in 1308 before formally disbanding the order in 1312, as did another Chinon parchment dated August 20, 1308, addressed to Philip IV of France. That also mentions that all Templars that had confessed to heresy were restored to the sacraments and to the unity of the Church. This other Chinon parchment has been well known to historians, having been published by Etienne Balluz in 1693 and Pierre Dupuy in 1751. The current position of the Roman Catholic Church is that the medieval persecution of the Knights Templar was unjust, that nothing was inherently wrong with the order or its rule, and that Pope Clement was pressed into his actions by the magnitude of the public scandal by the dominating influence of King Philip IV, who was Clement's relative. The Templar organization. The Templars were organized as a monastic order similar to St. Bernard's Cistercian order and was considered the first effective international organization in Europe. The organizational structure has a strong chain of authority. Each country with a significant Templar presence such as France, Jerusalem, England, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Tripoli, Antioch, Hungary and Croatia had their own master of the order for the Templars. All of them were subject to the Grand Master who was appointed for life and oversaw the order's military efforts in the east and their financial holdings in the west. The Grand Master exercised his authority via the Visitors General of the Order who were knights specially appointed by the Grand Master and Convent of Jerusalem to visit the different provinces, correct malpractices, introduce new regulations and resolve important disputes. The Visitors General had the power to remove knights from office and to suspend the master of the province concerned. No precise numbers exist, but it is estimated that there were between 15,000 and 20,000 Templars at the order's peak, of whom about a tenth were actual knights. There was a threefold division of the ranks of the Templars: the noble knights, the non-noble sergeants, and the chaplains. The Templars did not perform knighting ceremonies, so any knight wishing to become a Knight Templar had to be a knight already. They were the most visible branch of the order and wore the famous white mantles to symbolize their purity and chastity. They were equipped as heavy cavalry with 3 or 4 horses and 1 or 2 squires. Squires were generally not members of the order but were instead outsiders who were hired for a set period of time. The sergeants were beneath the knights in the order and drawn from non-noble families. See the articles on the Templar Key website. They brought vassal skills and trades from blacksmiths and builders, including administration of many of the order's European properties. In the Crusader states they fought alongside the knights as light cavalry with a single horse. Several of the order's most senior positions were reserved for sergeants, including the post of commander of the Vault of Acre, who was the de facto admiral of the Templar fleet. The sergeants wore black or brown. From 1139, chaplains constituted a third Templar class. They were ordained priests who cared for the Templars' spiritual needs. All 3 classes of brothers wore the order's red cross. Starting with founder Hugh de Payne in 1118, the order's highest office was that of Grand Master, a position which was held for life, though considering the martial nature of the order this could mean a very short tenure. All but 2 of the Grand Masters died in office and several died during military campaigns. For example, during the siege of Ascalon in 1153, Grand Master Bernard de Tremolay led a group of 40 Templars through a breach in the city walls. When the rest of the Crusader army did not follow, the Templars, including their Grand Master, were surrounded and beheaded. Grand Master Gerard de Riedfort was beheaded by Saladin in 1189 at the siege of Acre. The Grand Master oversaw all of the operations of the order, including both the military operations in the Holy Land and Eastern Europe and the Templars' financial and business dealings in Western Europe. Some Grand Masters also served as battlefield commanders. However, this was not always wise. Several blunders in de Riedfort's combat leadership contributed to the devastating defeat at the Battle of Hattin. The last Grand Master was Jacques de Molay, burned at the stake in Paris in 1314 by order of King Philip IV. Conduct. Bernard de Clairvaux and founder Hugh de Payne devised a specific code of conduct for the Templar order known to modern historians as the Latin Rule. Its 72 clauses lay down the details of the knight's way of life, including the types of garments they were to wear and how many horses they could have. Knights were to take their meals in silence, eat meat no more than 3 times per week, and not have physical contact of any kind with women, even members of their own families. A master of the order was assigned 4 horses and 1 chaplain brother and 1 clerk with 3 horses and 1 sergeant brother with 2 horses and 1 gentleman valet to carry his shield and lance with 1 horse. As the order grew, more guidelines were added and the original list of 72 clauses was expanded to several hundred in its final form. See the Rule of the Templars, the French text of the Rule of the Order of the Knights Templar by Judith Merry Upton Ward, 1997. The knights wore a white surcoat with a red cross, and a white mantle also with a red cross. The sergeants wore a black tunic with a red cross on the front and a black or brown mantle. The white mantle was assigned to the Templars at the Council of Troyes in 1129. The cross was most probably added to their robes at the launch of the Second Crusade in 1147 when Pope Eugenius III, King Louis VII of France and many other notables attended a meeting of the French Templars at their headquarters near Paris. See issue 4 of the Templar Key magazine. Under the rule the knights were to wear the white mantle at all times. They were even forbidden to eat or drink unless they wore it. The red cross the Templars wore on their robes was a symbol of martyrdom, and to die in combat was considered a great honor that assured a place in heaven. There was a cardinal rule that the warriors of the order should never surrender unless the Templar flag had fallen. Even then they were first to try to regroup with another of the Christian orders such as that of the Hospitallers. Only after all flags had fallen were they allowed to leave the battlefield. This uncompromising principle, along with their reputation for courage, excellent training and heavy armament, made the Templars one of the most feared combat forces in medieval times. Although not prescribed by the Templar rule, it later became customary for members of the order to wear long and prominent beards. In about 1240, Alberic of Trois-Fontaines described the Templars as an order of bearded brethren. While during the interrogations by the papal commissioners in Paris in 1310 to 1311, out of nearly 230 knights and brothers questioned, 76 are described as wearing a beard. In some cases specified as being in the style of the Templars, 133 are said to have shaved off their beards either in the renunciation of the order or because they had hoped to escape detection. Initiation, known as reception receptio in Latin, into the order was a profound commitment and involved a solemn ceremony. Outsiders were discouraged from attending the ceremony, which aroused the suspicions of medieval inquisitors during the later trials. New members had to willingly sign over all their wealth and goods to the order and take vows of poverty, chastity, piety, and obedience. Most brothers joined for life, although some were allowed to join for a set period. Sometimes a married man was allowed to join if he had his wife's permission, but he was not allowed to wear the white mantle. See issue 4 of the Templar Key magazine. Templar Key was founded in 2021 to fill the void between non-experts and academics within the world of esotericism. Templar Key has a website where you can become a member and access our mystery schools. The website is free to view and has many articles. There is no obligation to become a member. Just visit Templarkey.com. It's a great resource for those who want to learn more about the world of esotericism. If you choose to become a member, you will then have access to these mystery schools where they share their exclusive content, teachings, and research in the quarterly Templar Key magazine. It is published quarterly, has over 80 pages, and is available for purchase on our website. And is for all those who are interested and want to learn more about subjects such as Gnosticism, Mary Magdalene, Cathars, Templars, Wicca, Buddhism, tarot cards, primitive Christianity, Christian alchemy, Freemasonry, philosophy, and such forth. In our members area you have free daily tarot card and rune readings and a direct messaging service that you can use to talk to the team about any esoteric subjects within the magazines. Are you in search of understanding mysteries? Do you want to learn more about esotericism? Then Templar Key is where you need to be. We've all heard about occult societies, but how many of us really know their history? At Templar Key we offer you access to mystery schools and their history. People have choices and they choose to join us at Templar Key. We hope you enjoyed our video on the Knights Templar and their history. For more in-depth research, visit Templarkey.com, where you can find articles and become a member. This video gives you a brief overview of the Knights Templar. For a more in-depth look at the Templars and other esoteric subjects, the Templar Key magazine can be found on our website. The magazine has over 80 pages full of references and links, and is full of research that is little known outside the academic world. The Knights Templars are an interesting topic which is the subject of many books. There is still much to be discovered about this particular group of men, and this video is one way you can find out more about them. We hope you find this to be an interesting video on a group of warrior knights that continues to have a lot of speculation surrounding them. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime for more information and let us know if you have any questions or comments. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to learn more about the Knights Templar and many other esoteric subjects, please visit our website at templarkey.com. Thank you for watching. We hope you have learned something new.
Templar Key delves into the mysteries of Gobekli Tepe and its sister site Karahan Tepe. These are the oldest temples in the world. Gobekli Tepe was built 11,000 to 12,000 years ago in modern-day Turkey and preceded writing, metal tools, and even pottery. Many archaeologists had disregarded the site, but Klaus Schmidt thankfully was not one of them. When he arrived at Gobekli Tepe in 1994, he had a feeling the inconspicuous hill held a timeless mystery. And he was exactly right. Schmidt discovered a magnificent vast temple not long after arriving at the location in southeastern Turkey. Gobekli Tepe was more than just ancient ruins, it was an archaeologist's dream come true. It is regarded as the oldest temple in the world. Its existence shows that religion preceded agriculture. Not the other way around, overturning what historians assume to be true about human history. Its sister, Karahan Tepe, was discovered in 1997, but the first rigorous survey was conducted in the year 2000, revealing basin-like pools carved into bedrock as well as a large number of chisels and adzes, beads, remains of stone pots, grindstones, and pestles. The discovery of arrowheads, scrapers, perforators, blades, and other stone tools created from flint or obsidian implies that the people mainly relied on hunting and gathering or animal husbandry, as opposed to the majority of Neolithic settlements, which focused on agriculture, evidenced by the lack of farm vegetation in situ. The findings also indicate that the site was occupied throughout the pre-pottery Neolithic period between 10,500 and 6,500 BC, which corresponds with contemporary sites such as Safar Tepe 15 kilometers to the north, Sanlurfa Mahal, 63 kilometers to the west, and Gobekli Tepe, 40 kilometers to the south. Karahan Tepe share parallels with the Gobekli Tepe 2 layer, with 266 T-shaped pillars and animal reliefs representing snakes, insects, birds, the head and forelegs of a rabbit, the rear legs and tail of a gazelle, and the hind legs of an unknown species. Ian Hodder, an anthropologist from Stanford University, exclaimed, "Gobekli alters everything, it is elaborate, complicated, and pre-agricultural." This alone makes the location one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in decades. Gobekli Tepe promises new insights into the course of history, but it also contains a number of odd puzzles that have yet to be resolved. In the 1960s, when researchers first encountered Gobekli Tepe, they regarded it as little more than a medieval cemetery. The hill, whose Turkish name means Valley Hill, was composed of limestone fragments. And so many specialists assumed that these were gravestones. But the German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt saw something entirely different. After hearing about the hill, he wanted to check it out for himself. And upon his arrival at Gobekli Tepe, Schmidt assumed the hill to be artificial. He was convinced that only man could have produced such a monstrosity. As he stated later, "Within a minute of seeing it for the first time, I knew I had two options. Go away and tell no one, or I will work here for the rest of my life." Thankfully, Schmidt chose to remain. The expeditious action was advantageous. 1 year later, Schmidt and his crew discovered buried megaliths and pillars organized in circles. Some of the pillars had intricate sculptures of animals, such as lions, snakes, and scorpions. Even more interesting, the age of the site was quickly determined to be between 11,000 and 12,000 years old. Gobekli Tepe existed thousands of years prior to Stonehenge and the earliest human writing. And Schmidt considered his discovery to have further significance. Gobekli Tepe is the earliest holy site constructed by humans, he asserted. But how was Schmidt so confident that he had discovered the world's oldest temple? Schmidt and his team are convinced that Gobekli Tepe was a temple for a variety of reasons. A portion of their assurance stems from the absence of cooking hearths, dwellings, and garbage pits at the site. In other words, Gobekli Tepe does not appear to have been a settlement for ancient humans. In addition, the site was constructed prior to the domestication of animals and the cultivation of crops, making it a pre-agricultural location. An analysis of the animal bones discovered at the site revealed that the area was originally inhabited by a vast assortment of wild species, including wild boar, sheep, vultures, and ducks. According to Joris Peters, an archaeozoologist at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, 15,000 pieces of wild animal bone were consumed in the first year alone. Further evidence that Gobekli Tepe was not a town is provided by the fact that the people who congregated there killed any wild animals they could capture. Peters said, "It was pretty clear we were dealing with a hunter-gatherer site." In addition, several carvings were discovered at Gobekli Tepe, which may have represented early religious concepts. Schmidt stated, "I believe, at Gobekli Tepe we are confronted with the oldest representations of gods. The sculptures lack eyes, mouths, and faces. However, they have arms and hands. We wonder, do they represent the creators?" The individuals who carved these were, in my opinion, asking themselves the most important questions of all. Asking, what makes up the universe? And what is our purpose? Archaeologists believe that individuals may have traveled a great distance to address these questions. Schmidt believes that the temple may have attracted African and Levantine hunter-gatherers. Jens Nottroff, an archaeologist at Gobekli Tepe, concurred, "It's a marker." At those times, people had to meet frequently to maintain the integrity of the gene pool and exchange information. They did not congregate there by chance. But what makes the temple so noteworthy is its age. If Gobekli Tepe is the oldest temple in the world, then mankind must have gotten some aspects of their own history wrong.
The team at Templarkey thank you for watching our video, and we hope you enjoyed our mini Templar talk and our YouTube videos from Templarkey tours. You can sign up for the news that are on our website to keep informed of what's happening in the Templarkey team world. If you decide you want to become a member of Templarkey, just choose one of our quarterly magazines or take a yearly subscription.